It's a great pleasure to be here, and the last thing that I've come across to do is to stand in front of you and tell you yarns and stories about horse racing for the next half an hour or 45 minutes. It's not my line of work, I can't do that, and when people come before me there's usually not much frivolity, there's not much fun about it, it's usually pretty serious sort of stuff. We're dealing with a man or a woman's right to work, and we're dealing with million-dollar races and upholding protest and so on, so there's not much fun goes on in our line of work. But from time to time, odd little things happen. Probably most of you will have heard of a fellow in Sydney who recently gave up race riding, a fellow called Malcolm Johnson. Malcolm was the leading jockey in Sydney a number of times and leading apprentice a lot of times. A great rider, especially as a young man. But Malcolm didn't get along too well with people like myself, and he was suspended something like 49 or 51 or something times. But one day at Randwick, as they come up the rise at Randwick, usually some of them say you should wait until they get there, but all those days have gone. But anyway, this particular day, Malcolm came up the rise and he was locked away and shifted out quickly to try and get a run and go forward, and swash went about 4 or 5 of them outside. So we get them in and we're starting the inquiry very formally as we do, starting from the outside, working in, and all the evidence is pointing towards Johnson. So when we get to Malcolm, I sort of look at him and said, all right, Johnson, you've heard all the evidence, why'd you shift like that and cause this trouble? And he said, well, look, sir, I know I caused the trouble and I'm sorry about it, but as I went to go forward, the seagull flew and mine shied at it and shifted abruptly, and I've caused the trouble and I accept it and I'm sorry, but that's what happened. And we do have quite a lot of seagulls at Randwick too from time to time, especially when the seas are rough, so I thought, oh well, maybe this is good, we'll get out of this one. So we put the film on, and there's not a bloody seagull to be seen anywhere. So I said, all right, Johnson, where's the seagull you're talking about? And he said, listen, that was 10 minutes ago, it's flown away, you don't think it's still in there. Anyway, poor old Malcolm, that was about 45 or 46. But anyway, he copped it all right as time went on. We also, one day at Warwick Farm, I'll never forget, we had a boy up, he gave a horse kind of a quiet run, and it wasn't too bad. He was learning and the horse was fat and all these sort of things, but anyway, he was just a little bit too gentle with this particular horse, as happens from time to time. You people know about that just as well as I. Was trying to help him as much as I could whilst trying to justify the inquiry and the horse's run. And I said, all right, son, well, listen, now you've told us this about kicking the horse up. Where were you kicking up? And I expect him to say, oh, the 600 or the home turn or something. And he looked straight at me and said, in the ribs, where do you reckon? But anyway, we let him go in the end. He was, like I say, the horse was fat and so was he. I wanted, ladies and gentlemen and apprentices, say something to you about the dispensability of people in horse racing. I want to point briefly to the great social and national importance of the sport of racing, how it's administered, and I want to say to you right at the outset, especially those of you that are going through the school, that this great machine of ours must always be run in the interest of all, and it should never be tinkered at to accommodate the selfish interests of some groups or some individuals, or the despicable interests of some individuals or some groups of individuals.
Well, John, with the likes of the Cassidys and the Dyes and the Cookseys riding so successfully in Sydney these days, I suppose this is a little bit of a sneak preview for you coming out here to the Waikato District Apprentice School.
Yes, well, it is. You never know. There might be another Dye or a Cassidy here tonight. Let's hope that there is. Dye and Cassidy and Cooksley and all those people have made an enormous difference to Sydney racing, really.
So would you think that the apprentice schools in New Zealand are doing their job properly because of that, John?
Obviously they are. People like that, and you know, many others as well. Falvey and Saxton, all these people are riding well throughout New South Wales, so somebody's doing something right here, teaching them how to race ride, and those fellows are proving very successful, so something's being done right, yes.
And John, we hear reports back from the New Zealand jockeys that do go and ride in Sydney, and they all seem to fear this man they call the Sheriff, Mr. John Shreck. You're the Chief Stipendiary Steward for the AJC in the Sydney area, and you seem to have this aura about you of being a tough man. Do you see yourself in that role as being the tough man of the Australian racing scene?
No, not at all. We take a lot of action in Sydney, have done over the years, against all sorts of people, top jockeys like Quinton, like Dye, like Cassidy, like Dittman, like Moses, like Beedman. All those people have been suspended for long periods of time in Sydney. We make no apology for that at all. You know, if we think if someone's done the wrong thing, so far as racing is concerned, well then they ought to be penalised for it. And as I was trying to say tonight, we look upon safety as our first priority, and we take a dim view about one bloke causing interference to another. We take a lot of action, we have done over the years, but Paul, I make no apology for it.
Ladies and gentlemen, now I'd just like to take you through some of these films that we've got, and as we go, I'll make some comments on them and endeavour to point out some of the incidents that have occurred. This is J.A. Cassidy, probably one of the best jocks that I've seen. I don't know what he was doing this day. This is David Welch over here, who you all know. This is Casso coming across, and I don't know what he had in mind, but anyway, that's where he finishes up with David Welch. Now, just go back there. That's Cooley Bay, a horse of Group 1 winner in Australia, thank you. This of course cost Jimmy Cassidy the ride on Marauding and the Golden Slipper Stakes, cost him the winner on the Sydney Cup, all sorts of things. But I don't know quite, but you can see Casso, this is a horse that he just didn't give him a flip of the fly with, and that's where he finishes up. And again, I can say to you, what would we do without aluminium running rails? This is Greg out here this day. He must have had his own on it, although of course jockeys don't bet, as we all know. But as you can see here, he's drawn 15, and he must have thought he should have drawn 1, because as he comes across, you can see his mates, and you can see the way he leaves the running rail. Just go back there, please, Kevin. Now, and again I'll say to you, if that's fair, well then I'll give it away. Thank you. And it's just, this little boy came from down the Gippsland. He didn't come back to Melbourne for months and months and months. He must have thought, well, they can keep Melbourne racing for me. But anyway, this is Greg here in the white colours, and look where he leads. Just another thing, why it's not compulsory to have aluminium running rails on every racetrack in every part of the world, I'll never know. This is a horse back here that we also barred. Any of you, just go back there please, Kevin. Any of you can ride a horse in a big saddle that's just rooting ahead. They're no trouble at all. But thanks very much. But if you've got your knees up above their wither in a little tiny saddle, it's much more difficult. You can see this thing, silly looking thing here, but he's doing all he can to make it race, but it will not race, and he still has another go, but it's wool there, rocky neck, kind of 10 pounds for 10 seconds if you'll only step, you know what it's like. But anyway, he's got to eventually pull it up. But watch this bloke down here. He's probably saying to him, here you go, mate. This is a horse that we barred because we just thought it was sort of unfair to those about him. This is Ron Quinton again out here. This is when he was riding at his best, neat, and punishing with the whip. You can see the horse here goes to savage him the once. As if that's not enough, it tries to get hold of Quinton by the boot down here. You can see there. Just go back there, please, come. You can see there how it's trying. So we thought, well, that's hardly fair. What if it does get him by the boot? Thank you. What if it does get him by the boot? Pulls him off in the face of one. So obviously they're the sort of horses that we don't think we need around racetracks, and the horse has been barred.
John, in New Zealand there's been a lot of talk recently about changing our judicial system that we have in New Zealand, and very much so modelling it on the Australian system. Will you think this will be good for New Zealand to allow more professionalism into the judicial room?
I don't know enough about it, Paul, really to comment, and it's a policy matter that's something that should be determined and considered by the New Zealand racing authorities, not by someone like myself. But to generalise in answering the question, there are a number of things that need to happen before that would be a success in my view. The first thing is you'd need to have the right people. There's not much sense in putting in a judicial system like ours if you haven't got a good group of people. The second thing is that you'd need to have the right sort of appeal structure so that people like myself can be challenged all the time. The decisions we make need to be reviewed by proper appeal bodies. You would need to have, in my view, also the inquiries and the facilities that people like myself work out of open to the media, like to people like yourself, so that those that appear before us can be assured always of fair and proper treatment. So there are a number of things that the authorities will have to consider before making a decision in relation to the question you ask.
So it was Matamata apprentice Vinnie Colgan that joined this elite list of past winners of the Waikato District Apprentice Jockey School's #1 prize. Vinnie, apprentice to Roger James at Matamata, has been an outstanding young rider, and we wish him all the best in the future, as we do all the recipients of awards at the function held at Te Rapa on Monday night. For Action TV, Paul Moroney.